Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, John Nelson and John Wilkerson.
It's college football championship weekend, and there's some great championship games that are going to have some kind of impact on the college football playoff. Welcome to the College Football X. I'm John Wilkerson. You know, we've been talking about the feel-good stories in college football all year, and I think it would be very hard to top what's going on in Arizona right now with the Arizona State Sun Devils. After a couple of 3-win seasons, the Sun Devils now are double-digit in wins, 10-2. The voice of the ASU Sun Devils, Tim Healey, joins us. And Tim, we appreciate your time.
Hi, John. How you doing? I'm glad you're bringing this story up because you and I were chatting before we started taping this that I do think the Arizona State story has been one that has been almost overlooked and undervalued, if you will, by a lot of the mainstream college football media for most of the season up until the last couple of weeks. I think when the Sun Devils have basically skyrocketed to the top of the Big 12 standings, it's not only that they were coming off back-to-back 3-9 seasons, which, by the way, were the two worst seasons in the modern history of the Arizona State program, but they were also picked to finish dead last, 16th out of 16 in the Big 12 in their first year in the Big 12 conference. And for the Sun Devils to have flipped the script so dramatically and completely in less than a year's time is just an absolute tribute to second-year head coach Kenny Dillingham and his terrific coaching staff. What a job they have done to install their culture, work the transfer portal, develop players. You know, players have gotten better in this during the course of this season, and this has just been a fun journey and a fun thing to watch. And it just has kind of seemed to have added value week by week. The Sun Devils entered the month of November. You know, they were kind of middle of the pack in the Big 12, but they did win their 5 games in November. It was indeed a November to remember. And I broadcast 12 ASU sports events in the month of November, 5 football games, 7 men's basketball games, and the Sun Devils won every single one of them to go 12-0. And I tweeted on Saturday night that this is maybe the best month of the 27 years that I've been the radio voice here at ASU. And I have never had a tweet that got so many responses. The last I checked, it was over 2,000 likes. So I think it resonated with a lot of ASU fans because the last few years have been really tough ones for this athletic department. All the marquee sports have really struggled in the last couple of seasons, and it's really good to see these kind of things happening. And it's not just football, and it's not just men's basketball. ASU's women's volleyball team went 28-2 this year and won the Big 12 Conference Championship in their first year in the conference. It's the first ever conference title of any league for the women's volleyball program at Arizona State, and they're going to be hosting a couple of regional games in the NCAA tournament this coming weekend. So these are good times right now for ASU sports, and I know personally for me, I'm just going. I think there was a song years ago about stopping and smelling the roses, and I'm trying to do that and enjoy every minute of all the success these programs are having, but in particular right now, the great success that our football team is enjoying.
Well, you did mention the fact that ASU was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12, and all that's done is prove these preseason polls to be as worthless as the paper they're on, and yet I still vote in them, and why bother, right? But was there a particular game, a moment that impressed upon you that this ASU team is different from the past and can compete for a title?
That's a good question, John. I don't know if there really was a particular moment. Early in the season, the Sun Devils got off to a 3-0 start. And one of the reasons I think their success story up until a couple of weeks ago had been undervalued, I think, by the national college football media is that the honest truth is up until about 3 weeks ago, when they finished off with a closing stretch, winning at Kansas State, nationally ranked team, beating BYU, nationally ranked team, and then beating their arch rival Arizona, struggling with their season this year, but they were a 10-win team a year ago. Prior to that, I think the Sun Devils' wins had been accumulated against opponents that had an aggregate record of something like 20 games below 500. It had just been one of those things where ASU was defeating teams that were not having good seasons. Their first three games, they beat Wyoming, a team that was coming off a 9-win season a year ago, but the Cowpokes had a tough season this year. Then they beat Mississippi State, ASU's first ever win over an SEC team, but it's an SEC team that has struggled the last couple of years and did this year.
Hmm.
And then in week 3, they went on the road to play what I thought was a good group of 5 team in Texas State out of the Sun Belt Conference, and they beat them in a thrilling game, 31-28 on the road. And then after a loss to Texas Tech in the first ever Big 12 game for ASU, they had a bye week. And then in early October came back-to-back wins over Kansas and Utah. And Kansas was picked to finish near the top of the league and struggled this year, although they finished fairly strong. And it's been a rough go for Utah after they won, I think, their first 3 or 4 of their first 5, or they won their first 3 and then lost 7 in a row until they beat UCF in their season finale Thanksgiving weekend. But yeah, I mean, getting back to your question, there really wasn't a particular moment after a second bye week. They started November on the road at Oklahoma State in a game where they had to endure, I think, a 2.5-hour weather delay because of a thunderstorm. And of course, the Cowboys have been one of the most befuddling teams in all of college football.
Yes, they have.
With the talent they have, and to go winless this year in the Big 12 is just jaw-dropping to me. But ASU dominated that game in the second half, and I think they won some, I forget, something like 41-21. Then they had a game against UCF the following week at home where they had to play without their best player. Their running back, Cam Skattebo, was injured and late in the Oklahoma State game and couldn't play against UCF, and the Knights outgained ASU by something like 160 yards, and yet Arizona State found a way to win. So maybe that might have been the game in a way where I thought this might be interesting, because the Sun Devils were outplayed on offense and defense by UCF that evening, and yet they managed to win because they got a block punt return for a touchdown. They got a pick six in the final minute of the first half. So they scored in all 3 phases in that game, and just showed that on a night when they weren't at their best and they didn't have their best player, they were still able to get a win. And then the following week is when they really opened my eyes, when they go on the road to Kansas State, a team that was, I think, 7-1 at the time, and blew out to a 21-0 halftime lead and held on and won that game 24-14. K-State's only, I think, loss at home this year. And they just really, really played well in that game, and then had a home showdown with BYU that they were able to pull out and win, holding on at the end as they did against Kansas State. And then with all the marbles on the line last week, just absolutely put a whooping on Arizona down in Tucson. And there's nothing that brings joy to the heart of a Sun Devil fan more than any win over the Wildcats. But when you dominate them like that, and it was sweet revenge for ASU, because last year, just 1 year ago, the rivalry game was in Tempe, and it was Arizona that put a whooping on Arizona State, 59-23. Their quarterback, Noah Fafita, threw for a Territorial Cup game record 527 yards in that game. And Teteroa McMillan, who I think is the best receiver in college football, caught 11 passes for something like 260 yards in that game. Keep those numbers in mind, because this Saturday in the revenge game, when ASU got its sweet revenge in Tucson, Arizona had a total of 210 offensive yards in that game. So, and while the Sun Devils gained more than 600, so it was a big time beatdown for sure. And now they get the chance to play for the Big 12 championship. And who in the heck would have thunk it back in July or August that it had come to this. And you made a good point too. If you put on a piece of paper the media predictions of the Big 12 in preseason,
Yeah,
what you could really do is just invert the paper around, and that's how the standings ended up being. Because
pretty much. Yeah.
of the top four teams in the league, the teams that ended up tying for first place, Colorado, I think, was picked to finish 13th.
Hmm.
BYU was picked maybe 14th. Arizona State was picked dead last, 16th. I think of that group, Iowa State was somewhere in the middle. And then conversely, you had teams like Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Kansas, all of whom were expected to contend for the championship this year in year one of this expanded Big 12 conference. And yet, all of them had really, really difficult seasons. So, just it goes to show in this day of and I don't blame the media people too much because really in this day and age of the NIL and the transfer portal, it's really hard to get a gauge on, with complete roster transformations that are taking place year to year. It's hard to get a sense of who's going to be good and who's not going to be good
Yeah.
because you just don't know until you bring all these pieces together and try to mold them together into a cohesive unit. But I know Kenny Dillingham, our coach team, he thinks he loves how competitive a group they are, how connected a group they are, and it's just been a lot of fun to watch. And Cam Scadaboo he's been kind of the heart and soul of this team. Not only a great running back, who I think is a legitimate should be a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate. And oh, by the way, I do have a Heisman Trophy vote, but but he's also their spiritual leader as well. And the guys really, really rally around him. And they've gotten terrific quarterback play from a really talented young man, Sam Levitt, who's a redshirt freshman playing with poise beyond his years, able to make plays with his legs as much as he can with his arm. Uh, the unfortunate news for ASU moving into the postseason is they probably will not have their best receiver. Jordan Tyson suffered a very
Yeah.
painful injury they haven't released the specifics, but it appeared to be in the area of the left shoulder or left arm or left collarbone in the Arizona game, the second half of the Arizona game, after he had already accumulated well over 100 receiving yards on 9 receptions in the game, and he will be unavailable. So it's going to be a next man up situation for the Devils. I think they're going to have to lean on their running game and hope that one of their other receivers or several of their other receivers can step up. And I have confidence that they'll be able to do that because this team just seems to have an aura about it of competitiveness and yeah, throw some adversity our way, we'll deal with it. And so I'm anxious to see how they perform in that vein. But yeah, it's been a fun, it's like a magical carpet ride, It's been a lot of fun to be a part of, and hopefully the best is yet to come.
Well, you brought up Cam Scadaboo, and I guess I know where your Heisman vote's going to go, and I don't have one, but I finally got a chance to watch him play against Arizona, and boy, what a workhorse he is. Now he got well, Nick Saban on College Game Day said that that's his favorite college football player, and here where I'm located now in Metro Atlanta in the Southern football culture, that's nothing short of a papal blessing for Cam Scadaboo. But he is a special player, and he's really elevated Arizona State with his presence. But I want to get to Kenny Dillingham, the head coach, because he's from the Valley. He went to Arizona State. He is a Sun Devil to the core. So, what has his impact been since he took the job?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is he's so engaged in this place because, he grew up here, I guess rooting for the Sun Devils, going to games as a kid. And then he went to Arizona State. He got his degree from Arizona State. His wife, Bree, is a graduate of Arizona State. They've known each other, I think, since they were, kids in the same neighborhood in Scottsdale. And then Kenny got his introduction into college coaching when he was hired by our former head coach, Todd Graham, to be an analyst on his staff back in 2014 and 15. And I think he worked under ASU's offensive coordinator at the time, current Florida State head coach Mike Norvell. And
Mhm.
when Mike left ASU after the 2015 season to take the head coaching job at Memphis, Kenny went along with him.
Mhm.
And eventually, I think to coach quarterbacks, and then eventually he became offensive coordinator there. And then in very short order, he became offensive coordinator at Auburn, Florida State, and Oregon. Three big, and include Memphis. That's four significant big time college
Yep.
football schools, three of them Power Four or Power Five schools, and the offensive numbers that his units cranked out in every stop were off the charts. He coached Bo Nix at Auburn and then got a chance to coach Bo Nix again at Oregon.
Mhm.
And he did, great work. He still to this day says that former Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis's college journey to eventually become the star quarterback of a 13-win Seminole team was one of the best individual comeback stories he has seen in his coaching career. And keep in mind, this guy's only 34 years old. To give you some perspective, when I started broadcasting Arizona State sports on television back in 1988, Kenny wasn't even born. He was still about 2 years in the making. He was born in 1990, and here he is at the age of 34, and this was his dream job, I think, all along. And how many people, in coaching, get to be a head coach at the age of 33, was when he was hired. B, to have that first job be a Power Five school, and C, to have your first job be your destination job and not a stepping stone job. But this
Exactly.
is a place he wants to be. This is because he cares. He grew up here. He went to school here, graduated here. He's invested in the place, and that passion and that energy and that dedication shines through in everything he does and the way he approaches his job. And the other thing is, I just mentioned his age. He relates to the players. I mean, he's not a whole heck of a lot older than they are, and he'll play whatever the newest video game is. He'll go and compete with his guys in the lounge in the players' locker room and get after them with video games. He'll play with them and try to beat their butts in those games. And then the other thing is he's got coaching chops. He has a brilliant offensive mind as a tactician, and I've kind of called him a coaching savant. I mean, he just seems to be, like I told you about the quarterback Sam Levitt, who plays with poise beyond his years. Kenny is a guy that is, got wisdom and coaching ability beyond his years, and he has just been able to, mold this program, install a culture. And then he brought in a really good staff, hired several accomplished high school coaches in Arizona to try to build a picket fence around the state in terms of recruiting, and also just some really good, solid coaches. And, a couple in particular, Brian Ward, their defensive coordinator, formerly coached at places like Washington State and Syracuse, was a Broyles Award nominee last year and may well be this year. Just a tremendous defensive coach. Marcus Arroyo, their offensive coordinator, used to be the head coach at UNLV and was a former assistant, I think, Justin Herbert's position coach at Oregon. And at Arizona State, I think it was right before kickoff of the BYU game last weekend, the week before Thanksgiving. Arizona State announced that they have locked down both Coach Arroyo and Coach Ward with 3-year extensions, contract extensions to keep them here. And I think Kenny said they're in the process of working on trying to get extensions and raises for all the other members of his coaching staff. And another coach who has made a huge difference this year is a newcomer to this, not a newcomer to football fans, Hines Ward, the former
Yes.
Pittsburgh Steeler great, former University of Georgia great. Hines Ward has been the Sun Devils wide receivers coach this year, and he has just really done a magnificent job taking a unit that was not considered to be a strength of this football team and really molding them. The biggest influence he's had, I think a lot of it individually, is on Jordan Tyson, the injured young man who sadly will not be able to play against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game Saturday. But Jordan Tyson has just had a remarkable season and, had a 100-yard game against Arizona the other day. He's sixth in the Big 12 with 75 catches, over 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns, five 100-yard games. He has just he began his career at Colorado and last year had to sit out after he transferred to Arizona State, had to sit out because of an injury he suffered at the end of his time at Colorado. But he has just been fantastic this year. And the other way where Hines Ward's influence has been felt has been he makes his receivers block. Because if you recall, when Hines played, he was a terrific downfield blocker. And his motto is, if you don't block, you don't get the rock. So, and all of his receivers have taken that to heart. And some of the best blocks we've seen this year have been downfield blocks by Sun Devil wide receivers. And that's been no small part in the fact that this is an offense that has been in the top 25 nationally and is 24th in the FBS this week in rushing offense. They've been at, above, near, or just under 200 rushing yards per game all season. And the blocking of the receivers has been a big reason why. So it all gets back to the great staff that, Kenny has assembled and the way they go about their business. It's just been really fun to watch.
We're talking to Tim Healey, the voice of the Arizona State Sun Devils, and he's got an unexpected weekend trip to Arlington, Texas, as the Sun Devils play the Iowa State Cyclones in the Big 12 championship game. And you're starting to do your homework for that broadcast. You'll be doing the broadcast for on radio. Tell me about what are you looking at as you do your homework with Iowa State?
Yeah, I just put together my board in the process of doing it, have most of it done. That's how I spend my Sundays in the realm of play-by-play. A longtime NFL fan, but I don't get to watch a whole lot of NFL games. I grew up in D.C., so I'm a Washington Commanders fan, and of course their game with the Titans yesterday was a nice one, but it wasn't on TV here in Arizona. They had the Cardinals and the Minnesota Vikings, obviously, but. Anyway, that's what college play-by-play guy does. At least I do on Sundays, and I'm impressed. Iowa State's just a really good, solid program. Kenny was asked about the Cyclones today, and the first thing he said was physicality. How physical a football team they are and tough. And he's very complimentary of their coach Matt Campbell. In fact, a couple of years ago, Kenny said, well, I think when he was at Auburn as an offensive coordinator working for Gus Malzahn, that Gus allowed his assistants to go to one school a year, I guess, to study and what that football program does, and just maybe come up with some nuggets of knowledge that might help their programs and their coaches and whatnot. Anyway, long story short, how ironic it is, the school that Kenny picked at that time was Iowa State. And he went up there and spent some time and just really speaks in very complimentary terms on Matt Campbell. The thing he was impressed with Coach Campbell is how genuine a person he is, and that keeping it real, that type of personality that he has infiltrated into the program that he has built there. Just a really rock solid, competitive program that they're probably going to win somewhere between 7 and 9 games every year. And I think this is the first 10-win season in the history of their program. And they've got, you look at some of their personnel, they have a good quarterback in Rocco Becht, who was the son of former NFL tight end and West Virginia tight end Anthony Becht. And Rocco has thrown for over 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. He's also, I think, run for 7 scores. So he's kind of like Sam Levitt in that he's a guy that can make plays with his legs as much as his arm. And Kenny said their MO is they're just gonna be physical. They've got fullbacks. They have tight ends and also fullbacks that they use. So they're going to try to bloody your nose and gash you with a run game. And then if you come up and load the box, then Rocco Becht can drop back and throw to 2 receivers in particular that are both having big years. Jaden Higgins has caught 80 passes this year for them, and has gone over 1,000 receiving yards. And then they have a kid, Jalen Knoll, who's got catches in 44 consecutive games and has 67 receptions on the year. So, and then they have some tight ends that they can use as well, and again utilizing a fullback. So, offensively, they're a solid team. I think they average they're about the same as Arizona State. They average right around 31 points a game. I think they're a tick over. They're averaging like 423 offensive yards per game. That's a bit more than the Sun Devils. The Sun Devils are right around that 400-yard mark. The one thing that is going to be interesting from an ASU perspective is you look, and statistics don't tell the whole story, but statistically speaking, Iowa State's run defense appears to be suspect. They rank 14th in the Big 12 and give up 174 rushing yards a game. And that has been Arizona State's calling card, the ability with Cam Skattebo in particular to run the football. And they have a young man behind him in Kyson Brown, who's started to come on as the season has gone on. And Kyson gives them a little bit more explosiveness and speed at the running back spot. But Skattebo has just been so good. And maybe that's an area the Sun Devils can exploit, and they will need to, I think, because of the fact that they're going to be missing such a huge part of their passing game in Jordan Tyson. But then you look at other components of Iowa State's defense. Their pass defense is third nationally. They give up only 157 yards through the air per game. Sometimes that's a little bit misleading because if you can run on a football team, the opponents don't have to throw as much. So their pass defense numbers occasionally are, pretty good. But then scoring defense, first in the Big 12, 18th nationally, they only give up a little over 19 points a game. And that's when push comes to shove, that's probably the most important number at all, scoring defense. And they're solid there, and Arizona State is too. The Sun Devils are allowing just over 21 points per game. They're fourth in the Big 12 in scoring defense and second in the Big 12 in run defense. So a lot of interesting components going into this game, and the Sun Devils did not play Iowa State during the regular season. So it's going to be, and I don't think they have ever played Iowa State in football. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. In fact, as I think about it, I've been doing this radio thing here for 27 years, and I don't recall ever broadcasting a sports event. Arizona State versus Iowa State football, men's hoops. Iowa State does not have a baseball program, so this will be a first. We did play in the same basketball tournament as the Cyclones in I think it was 2014, and there's a tournament, Hall of Fame Classic in Kansas City that usually is the Monday and Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And we were in the same 4-team field as Iowa State, but we did not play them. We lost a heartbreaker to Maryland in the first round, and then Maryland went on to beat Iowa State to win the tournament title, and we lost to Alabama in the consolation game. But so this will be the first ever sports meeting that I've done between these two programs, and there's a lot of snowbirds out here in Arizona. I'm sure a lot of folks from Iowa that are out here in the desert that'll probably be pulling for the Cyclones, and I'm sure they will travel very well. I remember that basketball tournament in Kansas City, of course, from Ames, Iowa. That's not a terribly long trip, but it was they by far and away had the most fans at that tournament in KC, and I'll bet you they'll have thousands of fans in Arlington. And
there will be some.
I'm hoping Arizona State's fans will respond, because there are tens of thousands of ASU alums in Texas, and in particular in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And
Tim, I got to cut you off there, but I appreciate you joining us on the College Football X, and safe travels to Arlington, Texas. The College Football X continues after this timeout, and please like and subscribe.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our X page, formerly known as Twitter, at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever is on your mind about college football. Now back to the College Football X. Here's John Nelson.
Welcome back. Time to put a bow on the X here on the OSG Sports Network. Wilkie there, John here. And time to talk about the carousel, who's fired, who's hired, who's shifting, who's moving. We got youngins who are taking over as head coaching gigs now at the age of 33, offensive whiz-bang geniuses and whiz-kid types, and coaches who are giving up their buyouts so they can take jobs elsewhere. And apparently my school has an offensive coordinator who gave up his buyout at Central Florida, left $12.5 million on the table, minus any other shaving of the budget to where it would all fit, and the defensive coordinator that has been pulled from Nebraska in the refix is on. The fix is on. Everything is going to be okay in Tallahassee, Florida. They've got a new offensive coordinator in Gus Malzahn and a new defensive coordinator from Nebraska. Huzzahs and hoorays. Our national nightmare is over. This is me once again.
Retooling in Tallahassee.
This is me with the tongue firmly planted in cheek on this. Michigan has fired their OC, Kirk Campbell, after one season because
it just didn't work out.
No. Connor Wigman has entered the portal. From ATM. I think that Connor probably needs a better offensive setup and perhaps some offensive linemen that can
and a fresh start. He's got 2 years of eligibility
and keep him upright. That would probably be a good start.
No grass stains or dirt on the back of the jersey.
Yeah, Tyler Morris from Michigan is portaling. So the wide receiver there is portaling. You have a top 10 offensive lineman in Lamont Rogers, a 4-star offensive tackle with National Signing Day upon us and behind us.
I love how the coaching carousel is kind of shifted to the transfer portal.
I know. Well, it is. You get coaches portaling too. A 6'7", 310-pound lineman, the number 7 offensive tackle. He was committed to Missouri. Eli's come and hide your heart, girl, and he now stands as the top prospect in the ATM 2025 class. So you wonder what is happening there.
All right, so West Virginia lets Neil Brown go.
Sure, it's 6-6. I think the players kind of need to be held to a higher standard, but sure, okay.
Does your former coach take the job? That would be Jimbo Fisher. He's a West Virginia guy.
I could give a blank.
That's been floating out there.
I could give a blank.
Rich Rodriguez, the return.
I think that legitimately, Rich Rod, I think he's too happy at Jacksonville State.
I do too.
He's been left alone.
There's nothing wrong with those mid-major jobs when you've been to the big time.
I mean, it's just everything. And Dana Holgerson now got a 2-year deal to be Nebraska's OC, to be full time. By the way, we have our first bowl game figured out. San Jose State and South Florida in the Hawaii Bowl. That is officially official, by the way.
2 warm-weather schools going to paradise. Even better.
I wouldn't blame them. In the HBCUs, Alabama A&M fired Connell Maynor after 7 seasons. It was a rough season for them. They I believe, are part and parcel to why there is bad juju here at Office HD, because of the boss's school running up a score on Alabama A&M, and the season was never the same on the Plains after that.
All right.
You got and here's one more for you.
Okay.
Florida Atlantic hired Texas Tech offensive coordinator Zach Kittley.
Yep.
Be their new head coach. Zach Kittley was born in 1991.
Kenny Dillingham was born in 1990.
And so,
yes, the 90s invasion is hitting the college coaching ranks.
He was
I want to bring up 2 coaching opportunities, and really, do you want the job? Purdue and North Carolina.
No.
Purdue.
No.
You got to have a gimmick.
Yeah.
You got to. I mean, gimmicky offensive coaches are somewhat successful. I think it's Joe Tiller.
They got Kittley to
Jeff Brom.
Go to Purdue.
They went defensive last time and it didn't work out. North Carolina. I think ever since you and I have been born, we've heard that North Carolina is the sleeping giant program in college football. Sure. And yet they stay under the covers. They tried it with Butch Davis. You saw how that worked out. I thought he had it going until he got fired.
Until he didn't.
Yeah. So Mac Brown 1.0, Texas with a better job. I mean, really, do you want those headaches if you're established in the head coaching, or even if you want a head coaching job? Big Ten, ACC, I get it, but
nope, not interested. Absolutely not interested. To your point, Purdue should have hired Kitley, but Kitley's going to FAU, and he's got more to work with, and he's also got a bigger recruiting base to work from at Florida Atlantic because of target-rich Florida as a state that you can bring in folks. All Zach Kitley has to do at Florida Atlantic is run the tape. It is verts, it is air raid on steroids, and kids are going to have fun. They're going to get numbers. Just ask Bailey Zappi about the numbers that he put up under Kitley when Kitley was the OC at Western Kentucky. I would be more attracted to a Florida Atlantic scenario to go play than I would
better weather.
Go play in North Carolina, go play in Purdue.
Yeah.
And I would, if I was Zach Kitley, once again, it's a place where I can go and create. It's a lab. I can be left alone to my own devices, and I'm going to be given a runway because of my offense. And if Florida Atlantic is throwing out numbers and becomes bowl eligible, 7-5, 8-4, everything will be fine.
Well, it'll be fun to watch a coaching carousel and see who lands where.
Dreidel.
Close us out, John.
That has been another edition of the X, the College Football X here in the OSG Sports Network. Go to the onlinesportsguys.com. You can keep an eye on everything going on every single week. Be a part of our conversation on all of our social media platforms. Watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on YouTube. Listen to us on all of our conversation points, social media, on the 280-character app, on our Facebook page, and every place else. I think we're also on Blue Sky now, as a matter of fact, so you can set your notifications there as well. He's Wilkie. I'm John. Play it safe, everybody. Enjoy the games. We'll have a chance to talk about and some changes, I'm sure, in the CFP 12. See you next week.
And please like and subscribe.